It's strange to think that once Star Wars was my favorite franchise. I always said, these movies are my favorite, I love Star Wars, and nowadays I cannot say the same thing. Star Wars has fallen very far from the hill it was once on. Mandalorian series is ass. The Book of Boba Fett is atrocious. Obi-Wan was bad. Ahsoka is fucking dog shit. Andor is actually pretty fucking good. And Acolyte, made by Leslie fucking Headland. It's shit. Obviously, it's shit. And in my opinion, no one should watch it. Myself included. And from this point forward, I am not going to. And these are all the reasons as to why. Let me make this clear. If you do watch The Acolyte and you don't do what I say and not watch it and you don't agree with me, yes, this is an attack on you and you should absolutely be offended by everything I'm about to say. Right off the bat, I will say there are a couple good things. Master Soul, played by the guy who Squid Game, did a really, really good job. You can tell he actually cares when he's giving a performance. And he is a very good actor in real life and apparently a huge fan of the franchise. And I can tell. He gave a really good performance, semi-reminiscent of Qui-Gon Jinn, which I think was the intent. But yeah, he's really fucking good. He's the only character that's not an oblivious moron and makes actual, legitimately logical decisions. He does make some silly decisions at the end of episode 2. But outside of that, he's pretty fucking good. I like him a lot. The other kind of positive I have is Daphne Keane. This might come off as a bit of a backhanded compliment, but her makeup was entertainingly bad. The actual character hasn't done anything too stupid yet. Her performance is fine. There's nothing spectacular about it. She's given better ones in the past, but here she's fine. There's nothing too bad about her character. She's okay. She's tolerable. She has one or two funny moments. And yeah, that's pretty much it. The rest of the show is garbage. So the story of this show is that a Jedi in Carrie-Anne Moss was murdered in the opening, and the entire first episode is a mystery revolving around her murder. A mystery that I solved, and you will also probably solve in the first 5 minutes. No, I'm not exaggerating. Before the 10-minute mark, I figured out the mystery. In the opening scene, the antagonist of the show, or at least one of the main antagonists, goes to kill the Jedi, Carrie-Anne Moss, and as she does, she challenges her to a duel, looks hilariously stupid as she challenges her.
Attack me with all your strength.
Yeah, I don't know why Leslie made her do this, but she looks very, very funny. She looks the opposite of intimidating.
Attack me with all your strength.
Carrie-Anne Moss refuses, and as she does, the innocents who are at this table with her that we know nothing about end up attacking the Acolyte, and Carrie-Anne Moss, the Jedi Guardian, watches as this Acolyte beats up, maims, and possibly kills all of these people. She doesn't do a single thing to stop her. She doesn't pull her lightsaber out. She doesn't use the Force to push her or grip her like she does later. She actively watches her as she beats the fuck out of these people. For absolutely no reason. I know the Jedi are arrogant in the prequels, and with good reason, but it's different there. The Jedi don't ignore their basic duties just because they're arrogant. Yes, they're arrogant, but in the sense that they oversee Anakin's fall to the dark side. They're not able to see that Palpatine is rising because they're caught up in their arrogance and their very stupid ways in regards to attachment. That doesn't mean that they don't want to protect people. That's still their goal and their main duty. This is blatant character assassination. We then get a fight scene that a lot of people have actually praised, and I will say the fight choreography is okay. It's decently filmed, but the fight scene's destroyed by the fact that the Jedi is acting like an idiot. So throughout this entire fight, Carrie-Anne Moss has constant opportunities to stop the Acolyte and take her captive and question her, but she refuses to for plot convenience. Granted, I will say the Acolyte is shown to be able to escape Force grips, so it makes sense that Carrie-Anne Moss is not able to detain her with a Force grip. but she has a lightsaber that she just refuses to pull out. I'm not sure why. There's no real reason given.
A Jedi doesn't pull her weapon unless prepared to kill.
They are still coming through.
She just won't take out her fucking lightsaber, which is the signature Jedi weapon. I mean, she could literally disarm her and take her prisoner in the span of about 2 seconds, but for some reason just constantly refuses to take out her lightsaber, and we never know why. I mean, you don't have to kill her with it. All you have to do is cut her hand off and then she's your prisoner. And it's not your fault because she's trying to kill you. She's made her intentions known. Cut her hand off, cut her leg off, take her to prison. She's trying to kill you and she's proven to be a danger to other people. Why aren't you doing your one fucking duty? You don't even have to cut her limbs off. Just cut her knives in half and then put the saber against her neck. She's not gonna fucking do anything. But the Great Jedi doesn't even try any of that because she's a fucking moron for the sake of the plot. These problems with characters acting stupid for the sake of a cool fight scene happen throughout the show, at least in the first 2 episodes. Every fight scene, which there are 2 big ones, has characters acting dumb for the sake of the plot because they want to have a cool action scene. I have no problem with cool Jedi fight scenes where they have to resort to hand-to-hand combat. That's actually a pretty cool idea in my mind. But if you're going to do that, at least make it make sense. Make it within the character's right and make it within the character's best interest to do that. At this point, Carrie-Anne Moss has no reason to really do that. In fact, I would argue it's character assassination that she doesn't because she's being a dumbass. And then yes, a small-ass knife, not even the size of my finger, is thrown into her chest in a way that is kind of good and kind of awful. I do like the idea that the Acolyte is able to use the Jedi's weakness of caring about human life and about the lives of others against them in an effort to distract them so they can kill them. That idea is pretty good, but the execution is bad. Because for one thing, the opening proved that Carrie-Anne Moss didn't care that much about these people's lives as she watched the Acolyte beat them to a pulp. And then on the other hand, we watch this small-ass knife go into her, and that kills her. Which is kind of funny considering that lightsaber stabs can't even kill people anymore. But this small-ass knife can kill people. Don't get me wrong, normally I'd be all for it, but in the context of this universe and Disney Star Wars, I kind of have a hard time buying it. And it's just really, really funny. Anyway, Carrie-Anne Moss dies, and I will give it credit. Having Carrie-Anne Moss be in all the promotional marketing, only to kill her off in the first 7 minutes, I actually think was a good idea. In the same way that killing off Drew Barrymore in Scream was a good idea. If you're going to have a murder mystery, and you're going to cast a big main lead and put her all over the promotional marketing just to kill her in the opening, that's actually really interesting. It's what got people's investment in Scream, along with the really good characters. And had this murder mystery been done well, it could have got people's attention here. Hell, for a second, it got my attention until I figured out the mystery 2 minutes later, because right after Carrie-Anne Moss dies, we get the main character of the show. I've only seen one Acolyte trailer, so I didn't know about this twin sister thing, and I don't know if they revealed it before. But when Osha wakes up, that's the character's name, when Osha wakes up and she's going about her life, when I first saw this, for a minute, I thought that was actually the Acolyte, and that this show was going to be about the Acolyte going about her life and perhaps being a Jedi killer by night, and that we'd explore something with the dark side. And that idea, in my mind, is actually pretty fucking cool. And it's what they kind of advertised this show to be.
The Acolyte is a mystery thriller that will take us into a galaxy of shadowy secrets and emerging dark side powers in the final days of the High Republic era.
However, big surprise, that was not the case. This is just another Jedi show where they hunt down a dark side opponent, because we've definitely never seen that before. Are the writers just not aware that we've seen this done over and over and over again? Like a show about a Sith or a dark side user actually hunting down Jedi and going from their perspective could actually be really cool, but something that Disney's always been afraid to do. Even Rebels, a show that I don't exactly like, but I think is way better than most Disney Star Wars, they had the same problem. The Twin Sons episode where Darth Maul and Obi-Wan end up fighting for the last time, that's a cool little episode, but it would have been so much better if it was from Maul's perspective, because then it would be so much more satisfying. Ezra and Chopper did not belong in a Twin Sons story, at least in my opinion. That story was the final showdown between Maul and Obi-Wan. It should have been focused from Maul and Obi-Wan's perspectives. And honestly, if that episode had just been from Maul's perspective, and we were following him as he tries to find Kenobi, and you experience flashbacks and you see all he's done just to get here, only for that last moment with him clashing 2 saber strikes with Obi-Wan to be killed that quickly, it would be even more satisfying in my opinion. I would have loved that. But they didn't give that to us because ever since Disney acquired Star Wars, they've been afraid to do stories with the bad guys in the lead. They did it with Rebels, they did it with Battlefront 2, and now they're doing it with Acolyte because they don't want to have a bad guy be the main character for some reason. Anyway, by the time the character got outside to examine a fire in space that everyone keeps talking about, I figured out pretty quickly that this was in fact a different character and that the villain in the opening scene was her twin sister. And yes, this is a mystery that the episode keeps going for a very long time, to a point where you'll be surprised that they just don't just come right out and say it. And yes, the mystery is very obviously easily solvable. The villain in the opening act looks exactly like the main character because she's her twin sister. And speaking of that, the Jedi come by to speak to the protagonist, Osha. The reason is because they've been informed that a person matching Osha's description murdered Carrie Ann Moss's character. This description is from the bartender that she tried to kill. There's a few problems here. Number 1, this assumption that it was Osha does not come from DNA evidence, it comes from an eyewitness. This eyewitness, the only thing he could have possibly told the Jedi is that it was a mixed-race woman with red braided hair in a dark outfit. In a galaxy full of trillions of people, that could literally be anyone. It could be an assassin from the planet, it could be a bounty hunter, but no, somehow the Jedi figure out, oh, it has to be this old Padawan that apparently left the Order when she was 8. How? How did we get there? That could literally be anybody. Then Sol finds Osha and confronts her, and she reveals that her twin sister did it, and that she is innocent, and he says that he believes her. And in the next episode, we find out that the guy who said that Anakin destroyed the Death Star and killed millions.
But if you can't look and see that Anakin blowing up the Death Star possibly killed millions and millions of people, I'm going to get in trouble for saying this right now.
Then it's just like, but that is the beauty.
Apparently does not believe her, and even though he knows that she has a sister now, still believes that she probably did it, which is very stupid. Speaking of that character, for a guy who's a Jedi Knight, he's very nervous and acts very stupid. He makes really stupid assumptions about Osha throughout the whole first 2 episodes, and he's constantly touching his lightsaber, like not in a way that's good, but the slightest noise makes him always touch his lightsaber, and he's always just really itching to use it. I mean, granted, I like that more than Jedi who just refuse to use their weapon, but he's so nervous to the point where I feel like he should be a fucking Padawan. Anyway, in this episode, the guy from Game of Thrones is stuck in a force field, force shield thingy, and he apparently has been meditating for 10 years. Don't ask me how that works because the episode doesn't bother to explain it, and it's something that I've personally never heard of, but whatever. That's a thing that this show's doing now. So she goes to get a poison and offers it to him, and the Jedi responds by purposely committing suicide, which I found very funny, but that's okay. One little criticism here, there's a scene where the Acolyte breaks into this place with the Jedi, and she's hiding on the wall after the Jedi realize she's broken in because she destroyed their droid. And then it cuts, and we see she escaped off screen. How the fuck did she do that? Wouldn't the entire building be on high alert? Aren't there Jedi on every corner? How the fuck did this person escape? Osha figures out that the poison that the Acolyte conveniently left behind for no good reason actually belongs to her home world, and she knows who made it. That leads them to an actually really good concept scene where she imitates the Acolyte, which is a good idea. I hope we get more of the twins imitating each other throughout the show. They set a trap for the Acolyte, which is surprisingly successful, and Master Soul fights the Acolyte. In an okay fight scene, I'll say it's better than Carrie-Anne Moss's. The kung fu here is at least somewhat justified, because Master Soul makes it clear that he wants to convert the Acolyte and save her from herself, try to convince her to see things his way, and that she doesn't have to get revenge on him, Carrie-Anne Moss, and all the other Jedi, that there's still a way to save herself. I still don't think it's good enough for towards the end. At a certain point, I think he should have just pulled out his lightsaber and cut the knives at least, and perhaps at least contain her. He tries to contain her and read her mind towards the end, and she breaks out of his force grip. And at that point, I think it would have been justified to take out his lightsaber and at least disarm her. He did remove all her blades of the Force, which is pretty good, but he doesn't take out his lightsaber and at least get her down so that she can't do anything more. He just continues fighting her, and there's no reason to do so. Just get her down, capture her, and then you can work harder to redeem her. It's not that hard. At the end of the fight, the Acolyte escapes by pushing sand everywhere, and she has an opportunity while the Jedi are blinded to kill Soul, and she just chooses not to for some reason. So yeah, the show is bad. I struggle to find even a single good thing about it. Carrie-Anne Moss was fine in the one scene she was in. Master Soul is pretty consistently good when he's not being a dumbass. Daphne Keane is fine. The main lead is trying. The direction is bland, the cinematography's not good, the costumes are cheap, everyone looks like they're a cosplayer, there's a lot of characters just being stupid, it's a very contrived plot, the mystery was easily solvable, and it doesn't even live up to its initial premise. And then people are telling me that I'm a racist, sexist bigot because I notice these things and criticize them. Yeah, genuinely fuck you if you're one of those people. There's a couple genuine bigots I've seen, but they're the only people that a lot of defenders of the show want to respond to. They don't respond to people like me that actually criticize the fucking show. Listen, I don't give a fuck about how many white people there are in the show. I know some people do. I'm not in that group. I really do not give a fuck that this show doesn't have a lot of white people. It doesn't matter. I don't care that the main character has 2 moms. I care that the main character is a fucking idiot. I care that a Jedi stood by and watched innocent people get beaten because the director wanted them to have a cool fight scene. I care that the villain of the show has the funniest come-get-me pose I've ever seen, and it takes me out of it. I care that Star Wars looks like this in 2024 and looked like this in 1999. Both episodes aren't lit very well. It's lit with this really dirty, ugly, pale filter, and it just doesn't work. It makes things hard to see, and it just looks ugly. Whenever you're changing from location to location, a key thing is to have the lighting change with you. For example, in Star Wars Episode 2 Attack of the Clones, Tatooine has very warm, orangish lighting because it's a desert planet, populated with lots of people, some of which happen to be scumbags. And on Kamino, later on in that movie, the lighting is a lot paler, it's a lot more blue. The tone is a lot cooler and more isolated because it's not populated with normal people. It's corrupt aliens that are cloning a bounty hunter, and there's a certain level of unease that's put to it because you know something's not right. The lighting of the scene being a lot more blue and a lot more cold and isolated helps emphasize that. Even the sequel trilogy, for all its faults, with filmmaking aspects were at least competent. The lighting in Force Awakens and Last Jedi is genuinely really fucking good. It always helped convey the tone of the scene, even if the scene was complete shit. Oh boy. This is the really, really fucking bad one. And I had a great fucking time watching it. Don't get me wrong, it's easily the worst content I've ever consumed in Star Wars, but it's also kind of beautiful how horrible it is. So the episode opens up with May and Osha as kids, wandering around and choking butterflies. Osha obviously is more sympathetic, telling May to stop, while May has fun killing butterflies because she's a little sociopath. And we have our first particularly funny observation. May and Osha canonically are identical twins. Why Leslie did this, I don't know. They're even played by the same actress, as adults anyway. But for the flashbacks, she hired actual twins, which is fine. But the twins that she hired aren't even identical twins. So in the flashback, the twins don't look anything alike. And it is very, very, very funny. We then get introduced to the witches who look absolutely fucking hilarious. Osha and May have two moms. I don't remember either of the moms' names, so we're just gonna call them Bree and Amanda. So Bree is portrayed as a particularly stern mother. She's much stricter and much harsher because she very clearly cares more about the kids being witches than their actual well-being. Whereas Amanda cares a great deal about them becoming witches, but also cares a bit more about their well-being. You then get a practice session with Amanda teaching the kids how to properly use the Force, or as she's so kindly explained, the thread. And here's where the very, very funny breaks in continuity get even crazier.
All living things are connected by the same thread. A thread woven through all of existence.
Force has now been redefined as a fucking thread that you can pull from and make force pushes with, which doesn't make any fucking sense. Where did this come from? This is just not true. Is to just say that this is a religion that depicts the Force wrong. And if that's what they were going for, they did a very poor job at explaining that. He says that if you tug on the thread, you change everything, but like, what does that mean? If you pull on the thread, like, what are you changing? Are you changing time? Are you changing the future? Are you drawing power from the Force? Are you weakening the Force? Why does it change everything? Why are you defining it as a thread? If you're taking from the thread, what exactly are you changing? If it's a thread that binds everything together, and not just an energy field, then when you pluck the thread, are you weakening the power and unbinding something? Later on in the episode, Amanda states that when Osha is trying to leave the Jedi, that if she wants to pull a thread, pull it. But like, what does that mean? I thought when you pulled on the thread, you were doing a force push. Does thread already know your destiny? Are you changing the thread by taking a different path? How do you know what path is actually meant for Osha? I'm so confused. Why the fuck did you define the Force like this? I mean, take the Plagueis story, for example. Granted, it's legends, but it shows at least the original intent of the Force. Plagueis and Palpatine try to create the perfect dark side user, and they fail. And in doing so, they piss off the Force, and the Force responds by creating Anakin. Now, granted, that's not canon. In canon, Anakin is just a child of the Force, which I actually prefer. But in the Legends story, Palpatine and Plagueis accidentally indirectly created Anakin because they fucked with the Force and they pushed it too far. That's how it works. The Force doesn't bend to anyone's will, and it doesn't have any favorites. Osha makes it clear that she doesn't really want to be a witch, and Bree even takes notice of this, and she acts very hilariously strict towards these children.
Osha! I expect more from you.
I'm not sure if it's just that the actress is really bad in general, or if Leslie was just directing her poorly, but Bree is very, 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 very funny. There isn't a single nice scene of her being a good mother towards either of these kids, but she very clearly favors May because May is actually trying to be a witch. And if you want to write that story, fine, but at least do something with it. Because something I noticed by this episode is that there is an interesting concept hidden in here. It's just executed really badly. The idea of two children being raised in witches, and one of them not wanting to be a witch and wanting to go to another religion, that religion being the Jedi, and the other wanting to stay here, could be interesting. It raises a lot of questions, and it could tell and send a genuine message that's actually subtle and well conveyed. Eventually, the actual ceremony starts, and Mother Amanda has the funniest cult I've ever seen in my life. For some reason, Leslie decided to have this cult have actual fucking orgasms.
The power of one. The power of two. The power of three.
May gets a nice little tattoo on her head, signifying that she's going to be a witch. And then Osha struggles and hesitates, and then the Jedi come in because Sol saw the children earlier going outside the barrier that they're not supposed to leave, apparently. The witches then hide the children by quite literally standing in front of them. You'd think they'd have an adult just take the children and hide inside of a room or something. No, they actually just keep them inside of the crowd of witches. There's a bit of a confrontation where the Jedi are opposed by the witches and they're a bit mean towards them, telling them to fuck off and that there's no children there, only for the Wookiee Jedi to discover that there are in fact children there, which the witches just lied about, and then they ask the witches for permission to test them. Osha says she really wants to get tested, and May really doesn't, but she has to. It is very weird that the Jedi want to test these children very badly, because in Phantom Menace, they didn't even want to train Anakin because he was too old and had too many attachments, and his only attachment was his mother. May and Osha are attached to their entire witch family. Why the fuck would the Jedi want them? It makes sense they would want to register them and maybe even take them to the council, but why would they even want to train them? And why did they train Osha? She was traumatized by the end of the episode. She was far more susceptible to the dark side than May ever was. Bree really doesn't want to give them up to the Jedi and complains, stating that she carried them, which means that she has a right to decide what happens with their lives.
Where is their father?
They have no father.
I carried them.
I created them.
So, the prophecy of the Chosen One states that someone will be born without a father, and that they will bring balance to the Force. I know this because in Phantom Menace, as soon as Qui-Gon mentions that Anakin has no father, Mace responds with the Chosen One prophecy.
It is possible he was conceived by the midichlorians.
You refer to the prophecy of the one who will bring balance to the Force.
This directly implies the big sign of someone being the Chosen One would be that they had no father. So, did the Jedi not question that these children would be the Chosen Ones? Does that mean that the Chosen One is more than one person? Are there 3 Chosen Ones? It makes Anakin a lot less special, and it makes Qui-Gon kind of look like a dumbass. Now, these witches don't use magic like the Clone Wars ones. They use the actual Force. So, you have to take this into account. That means that Palpatine has the ability to create people from thin air like this woman. You have successfully made all of Star Wars laughably pointless. Good job, you fucking bitch. The next day, May and Osha take the test. There's actually a nice moment where Torben collects her blood so that he can get her midichlorian count. And it's actually a nice little moment of continuity. I didn't realize these people actually watched Phantom Menace, but it's nice to know that at least someone did. And listen, I know it's weird that I'm giving the show credit for this, but you have to understand, this show breaks continuity every 2 minutes. So on the rare occasion that it actually keeps it, I have to give it the clap. Osha tries to fail the test, but Sol knows what she's doing and exposes her, and then she passes, and she says she wants to be a Jedi. May then says that she wants to fucking kill her.
I'll kill you.
May and Osha meet, and then they fall, and Sol grabs Osha and does not get May. Now, I thought they were actually going to do something cool here by having Sol be limited and only be able to catch one with the Force. But no, he actually catches Osha with his hand, meaning he could have used the Force to catch May and just kind of chose not to. So yeah, this show was dumb. But this episode was very entertaining. Strangely enough, now I have no problem with people defending the show, saying they like it, but there's been a lot of coping, like, to an annoying degree. The only criticism that anyone seems to want to respond to is criticism that's obviously invalid, which is, oh, there's not enough white people, oh, the show's racist. You know, people saying anyone who dislikes the show is a racist bigot or a sexist bigot or a homophobic bigot. I mean, I'm not saying those people don't exist, but they're not worth responding to when there's actual criticism that you can give the show and no one's responding to it. And there's a lot of coping whenever someone actually does try to. For example, I made the criticism on Twitter, and I made the criticism again here briefly, but it is very funny that in the canon of Star Wars, lightsaber stabs aren't really lethal anymore, but knife stabs are. I'm not saying stabs to the heart shouldn't be lethal. They should. It's not even really a problem with Acolyte. It's a problem with just Disney Star Wars as a whole. It makes it a lot funnier that this tiny-ass knife killed this Jedi Master, but these lightsaber stabs can't even kill a fucking child. But people have the most insane coping defenses for it, talking about how, well, it's okay for Sabine because she went to a Bacta tank. Okay, that's an explanation, not a justification. That doesn't make it better. You know when you get stabbed by a lightsaber, that lightsabers melt things, right?
Are you stupid?
I mean, just look at tweets like this. What the fuck are you smoking? Are you really trying to argue that lightsabers are not designed to kill? I'm not saying that everyone tries to kill with them immediately, but lightsabers are a Jedi's significant weapon, which are there for self-defense purposes, and if need be, to kill. Some people are just coping so hard whenever people like me criticize the show, and it's frustrating. Yes, I'm pointing out an inconsistency, because the problem isn't a knife killing someone. The problem is, are knives more lethal than lightsabers now? Because characters like Reva survive things like that. Again, these are the questions you have to ask, and they're not necessarily even points against Acolyte. It's points against Star Wars as a whole and the state that it's in. But when we raise these questions, people come up with these insane defenses. And honestly, you can defend what you want, but at least be competent and don't be a dick about it. The only defense I consistently see is, oh, the Acolyte hate is so forced. Okay, but why? I have yet to see anyone tell me what's actually so good about the show. Is it the Jedi's stupidity and not using their lightsaber whenever they're attacked? Is it the part where the Jedi watches as innocent people get maimed to death? Is it the end of episode 2 where the character from High Republic tells Sol not to go get the Acolyte, even though he knows where he's going to be because he just has to wait for the Council to say so? Even in Lucas' Star Wars and in the Clone War, if a Jedi knew where an enemy was going to be, it was almost always okay for them to go get them. They never had to wait for the Council. They just had to inform the Council. Them waiting to this degree and the Council being this corrupt just wasn't a thing in Phantom Menace. I'm all for criticizing the original Jedi. That was Lucas's intention with the prequels. He did want to criticize the Jedi to some extent. This was just too far, and as far as how stupid they are. They're literally actively letting the Acolyte get away. Why is everything so stupid? The point I'm making is, I don't care if you like the show or you think it's good. That's your opinion. That's your take. There's nothing wrong with that. But don't cope to this degree, and don't scream at me that I'm a bigot and that only bigots dislike the show. That's not true. I honestly have yet to see any big bigoted comments. I'm talking about the vast majority of criticism. I haven't seen any real bigotry comments. I've seen like maybe 1 or 2, and they're random Twitter users. They're not worth giving the attention to. I'm not saying it's not valid to say that they're shitty people. Just stop giving them attention. That's what I do. There's obviously a certain side of YouTube that's very controversial, that likes to frequently make fun of Hollywood and insult them and criticize them for not having enough white people in their products. Those people will probably make that same criticism towards Acolyte. I'm not one of them. I'm not going to make that criticism because I don't think it's valid. Not because I'm racist, but just because I don't think race matters that much on any front. White, black, Asian, I don't think it matters. What matters is the story that you're producing and how good it is. The story they produced was not of quality. That's what I'm criticizing, and I have yet to see anyone actually properly defend anything I've said. Anytime an actual valid criticism is being made, I just see people coping in the most insane way. Now, this right here is an example of someone who's actually being a normal person. This, I think, is cool. This person, I don't know who it is, they're approaching this with a level head, and they're being nice about it. They're saying, hey, I love the show, I was blown away, and that's a perfectly fine opinion to have, and they expressed it in a kind way. Like I said, you can like what you like. Just Don't be so toxic about liking it that you paint criticism as bad. Criticism is important, and I think a show like Acolyte desperately needs it because I'm tired of content like this. I'm tired of Ahsokas. I'm tired of Obi-Wans. I'm tired of Mandalorians. I'm tired of Acolyte. Shows like this need to stop being made by Disney because they're fucking terrible. And I don't know why we accept them, because that's why we keep getting shows like this. The reason we don't have more Andors is because Andor bombed for being too boring, quote unquote. Us watching it, even if you're hate watching it, is telling Disney that this kind of content is okay. It's not. Andor is the type of Star Wars content we need. The filmmaking is not good. They're not trying hard enough to make these shows good. Shows like Acolyte and Ahsoka are barely trying, and it's insulting in my opinion. Although, to give credit, Ahsoka may have been really bad, but at least it had Baylan and Shin Hati. They were interesting. Shin Hati was nice to look at. This show honestly has nothing going for it outside of Master Soul. Another reason why I don't want to watch this show has to do with the showrunner, Leslie fucking Headland. There's no easy way to say this. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. I hate her. I despise this woman. Passionately and viciously. Understand, even if you like this show, Leslie Headland is not a Star Wars fan. She's been passively attacking Star Wars fans and Star Wars as a franchise for years. She's very hubris about the way she goes about it. And she does it in a way that's just insulting. She's insulted George Lucas, but no one talks about that.
Like, what we understand to be Star Wars, like, the idea that, that only came from George Lucas, that only George Lucas holds the key for what we understand to be Star Wars, is just untrue. And I think the prequels are an excellent example of that. I mean, the idea that, when you're hiring a director, that everyone is sitting in there waiting for George Lucas and not for the person who's going to know to hire Ralph McQuarrie, that's the problem. That's the problem. That's the misogyny and the problem with the auteur myth as it stands.
What a fucking idiot. Let me explain what's wrong with what she stated here. She's basically taking issue with the idea that people have to answer to George Lucas and that they have to approach him and wait for his input on his own property. Now, let me educate you. First of all, what she's saying isn't even true anymore because George Lucas has not owned Star Wars in about 10 years. He sold the property, he sold the IP back in 2014. But the reason people hold such high regard for him and want to get his input on stuff is because he created this IP, you fucking idiot. It has nothing to do with misogyny. This is his creation. You may not like the prequels, but that's his story. He had every right to tell it. I don't even love the prequels. I've criticized them before too. But it's his story. He can choose how he wants to do it. You may not like it, but it's the story that came from his imagination. George Lucas dictates what happens in Star Wars and what it is because that's his creation. That belongs to him, you fucking moron. That's why we respect George Lucas. Because even if you don't like the prequels, he's the reason you have the original trilogy. He's the reason you have everything in Star Wars that you like. Because without him, you would never have this piece of shit show that you get to preach to us about. You don't actually have to consult George anymore, so I don't know why she's complaining about this. But even if you did, it's not misogyny. With Disney, they bought his IP. It's a little bit different. They bought the creation that he made, that came from his head. It's still an IP that he created. Therefore, he has way more say because he understands the world more than you or I do. You fucking moron. Go fuck yourself. I'm sorry, but honestly, I don't understand anyone who supports this woman. She's a dumbass. And frankly, I think it's very interesting that she's preaching to me about how answering to George Lucas is misogyny because he's a man who created something more interesting than she'll ever do. And yet, she's Harvey Weinstein's former personal assistant. Yeah, I haven't forgotten about that. If you're gonna preach to me about misogyny, then yeah, I'll preach to you about how you worked for this piece of shit. But here she is, preaching to me about how answering to George Lucas is misogyny and how that's the problem with Star Wars. No, it's not. The problem is hubris morons like you. That's the problem. And that's the big reason why I've always had a bit of distrust towards this show. Leslie Headland has been shitting on George Lucas very openly and publicly and other fans for years. because she thinks she understands Star Wars better than him because she's that stupid. The fact that people gave Brie Larson shit for what she said enough to boycott her movie and to cause that big of a controversy but aren't about her when what Leslie Headland is saying is infinitely worse, it just insults me and it infuriates me, genuinely. I don't know why anyone's okay with her, especially when, again, I'm gonna say it one more time, she's preaching about misogyny when she used to work for Harvey Weinstein. I'm gonna be probably canceled for this, but when it comes to the LGBTQ being included in Star Wars, I think that's fine. I'm actually in support of that. Andor did it very well, and I hope other shows do it even better. Because I'm under a firm belief that Star Wars is for everyone and will always be for everyone. That was George Lucas's intent, and it's how it should stay.
Gayest Star Wars, I think, by a considerable margin. And are you excited about that? Are you
Not
bracing
the gayest
yourself?
Star Wars. Not the.
It's pretty gay. Let's be honest. Leslie, how do you feel?
Am I gay? Yes.
Well, no, I know you are gay, but I'm asking, are you excited about putting this, this is going to be a talking point.
Is it going to be a talking point?
This show is literally defined by having intimacy coordinators and by being a gayer Star Wars show. I don't care if your Star Wars show has gay characters in it. I think that's fine. I'm in support of that. Talk about your story. That's all I want. When you're giving interviews, when you're talking about Star Wars, talk about Star Wars. I don't care if you have a gay character. I don't care if you have every character be gay. That's fine. Talk about your story. Don't make it the forefront of your story. Romance has never been at the forefront of Star Wars. Never has, never will be. That's what it is. It's a B plot. Keep it that way. I don't care, straight, gay, lesbian, I don't care. Just don't focus that much on it either way. Don't make it the forefront of all your interviews. Don't constantly talk about how you're going to change the game by being diverse. I promise you guys, I'm not an anti-SJW. I don't normally get into these kind of conversations. Compare this to Jessica Jones. Jessica Jones is also a pretty diverse show, and it's very proud of it, as it should be. However, that wasn't the forefront. That's not what everyone talked about in their interviews. What's at the forefront is what should be at the forefront of every show. The story. The show told me a good story. That's all that matters. It just happened to also have gay characters in it and transgender characters in it. And that's good. That's how it should be. Carrie-Anne Moss even plays a gay character in the show, in Hogarth, and it's very interesting. She actually plays one of the most compelling characters. That's how it should be. The show told me an actual gripping story that just happens to have a diverse cast, and that's great. On both fronts, we get a wonderfully diverse cast that gets to be in an actual great story. Star Wars needs to change. The way it's going right now, it ain't good. We have this shitty showrunner taking shots at fans, and we're getting shitty content because we keep consuming it. In my opinion, the only way to get better content like Andor is to simply stop hate watching or even watching in general the shitty shows. If we don't give it the view, maybe they'll fucking change. That's the only solution I have left.